Okay, doing memory again because it didn't save, and so I've already done it like 3 times, and I've also decided, because social influence, I just did it all in one video, where I kind of had to like rush through it, but I think I've decided I'm gonna do one video per like topic, but not always per topic, but like I'm gonna do more videos per topic. So coding capacity and duration is, coding was done by Baddeley, and he gave participants an original list of words, and he asked them to record them until they could record them with 100% accuracy. Then he gave them a second list of words, and I think it was either synonyms, antonyms. No, that's not right. It was acoustically similar, acoustically dissimilar, semantically similar, and semantically dissimilar. And he found participants that record immediately from short-term memory were worse with acoustically similar, and participants who recalled from long-term memory, so after an interval of 20 minutes, were worse with semantically similar. Let me check that's right. Yes. So this shows that they're coded separately. Okay. Coding capacity is Barrick and Miller. So Barrick gave participants Barrick basically found that he looked at digit span, and he found digit span for letters was 7.3 and for numbers 9.3. Okay, no. Digit span, mean span for digits was 9.3 and mean span for letters was 7.3. And how did he do this? Oh, okay, I don't know. So he gave them like 4 words or like letters, digits, and then if they got those all right, then he gave them 5, 6, 7, 8. So he just carried on until they couldn't get it anymore. Okay, and then Miller looked at everyday practice, and he observed that 7 is a reoccurring number that we often like have like in society, and so he concluded that average capacity for short-term memory is 7 plus minus 2. But the criticism of this is Cohen, who said it's more accurately like 4, like the lower end of Miller's estimate at 5. Okay, and then duration of long-term memory. Duration of short-term memory was Margaret and Lloyd Peterson, and they gave participants a list. They gave participants a constant syllable such as YVG to remember, and a number. And after there were 8 trials, and on each trial they were told to stop after varying periods of time: 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18 seconds. They found after 3 seconds average recall was 80%, and after 18 seconds average recall was 3%. And they concluded that the long-term short-term memory duration is 18 seconds. Okay, then Barrick looked at long-term memory duration. He obtained the high school yearbooks of 390 American participants, and he tested them for photo recognition and free recall, so they had to identify the people. And in the photo recognition, participants tested within 48 years of graduating, their recall was 90%. Participants tested after 48 years of graduating, their recall was 70%. And then free recall condition, the correlating stats I think were 60% and 30%. So that shows memory deterioration over time, and yeah. So that kind of shows that memory can be up to a lifetime. Okay, and now onto evaluation for coding capacity and duration. Okay, Baddeley separate memory stores. This helped to lead to the multi-store model of memory, which was an important movement in psychological understanding of memory. Artificial stimuli. For all of them, artificial stimuli lacks mundane realism, so can't really reflect real life practice, apart from Barrick. So that's a criticism of all of them. And then, so that's coding. Okay, capacity. The criticism is, again, artificial stimuli, and Cohen said the thing about it being more like 4, not 7 plus minus 2. And then duration, Barrick and mundane realism is really reflects kind of memory tasks you would engage with in real life, like remembering your high school friends or like your peers. And Margaret Lloyd Peterson lacks mundane realism. Yeah, okay, I said that. Okay, Jacob's findings, because it's such an old study, like, as a study it's not very good. However, Bopp and Verhagen replicated the study and they had much more control over their conditions and they confirmed the findings. Okay, artificial stimuli, I said that, okay, and then the final evaluation point is that I have is real world value, because in 2013 Dr. Small found that 14% of adults aged 18 to 39 recorded having some memory issue at some point in that time. So memory is obviously a really big issue with the general public. Now it's just in the UK. So it shows that understanding how memory is coded and the capacity and duration is really valuable in psychological understanding, which can be used in treatments and interventions. Okay, that's coding, capacity and duration. Now I'm going to check I got everything. Coding, okay, that took me a second to get that, but I got it. Capacity, I got that. Chunking basically means when you chunk letters or any kind of information together, it means you can remember the same amount of words as you could letters, so you could remember 5 words and 5 letters with the same like confidence. So it allows you to remember more information. And then evaluation for this is real world application. This can help us improve memory techniques, such as like revising for an exam. You could use chunking. I mean, I don't know how you would, but you could. Yeah, duration of STM. Said that. Oh, the counting was done to prevent memory rehearsal. So that's a good criticism that they took into account memory rehearsal. Peterson squared in that study. Duration, said that. Okay, so yeah, that's coding, capacity and duration. Now the next video is going to be multi-store model of memory and the working memory model. Yay! Yeah, sorry about the background noise, but it's fine. This is why I'm boarding next week. Right, multi-store model of memory. This was done in 1972 by Atkinson and Shiffrin. Okay, I'm going to draw it and then I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is the multi-store model of memory. So, sensory register, short-term memory, long-term memory. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. Like this, like a teacher. Information is processed into the sensory register. Okay, wait, no, I don't need to do that. And the sensory register is coded sensory modal, so by the senses, and these are divided into separate like stores, like echoic and iconic, each store per sense. And then the capacity is everything, and in each eye there is, I think, over 1 million receptors, and the duration is half a millisecond. So that's sensory register. Short-term memory is coded acoustically. The capacity is 7 plus minus 2. However, Cohen critiqued this and said it was more like 4. And the duration is 18 seconds. Then long-term memory is coded semantically. The duration is up to a lifetime, and the capacity is thought to be unlimited. Okay, evaluation. I don't know what order I've done it on the board. I'm just going to say evaluation is KF, evidence for separate memory stores. Because when he had information read to him, he couldn't recall it, but when he wrote it himself, he could. So the model's too simplistic. It's a bygone model because, again, it's too simplistic and there's not enough research for it. And then we can talk about the research on the previous spread. However, the criticism of the majority of that research, apart from Barrick, is that it lacks mundane realism and ecological validity. What else have I said? Cohen, more like 4 items, oversimplified. And then oversimplified, we could say badly in Hitch's working memory model shows more for the short-term memory. It's much more complex than Atkinson and Shiffrin have suggested. And then one psychologist proposed that it's more about elaborative rehearsal than the type of rehearsal, so even the rehearsal's not understood properly. But yeah, that's the multi-store model of memory by Atkinson and Shiffrin. I also just remembered the multi-store model of memory lacks temporal validity, because we now know it's much more complicated than that. So low temporal validity because it hasn't stood the test of time. Okay, now I'm going to do the working memory model, which was proposed by Baddeley and Hitch. And I think this was, I think Baddeley and Hitch proposed it, I think, only 4 years later. Okay, so, and this is using Baddeley's research that memory is coded in separate stores. So at the top you have the central executive, and the central executive has a supervisory role in allocating information to the visuospatial sketchpad, which codes for visual information. And I always get this mixed up, but I think it's the phonological loop. And then in the middle you have the episodic buffer, which the episodic buffer has the overflow of information. And then at the bottom you have long-term memory. So this model is focusing on short-term memory. Okay, look, this is the very basic model. And then within the phonological loop you have the phonological store. It might be the other way around, but no, I don't think it is. Okay, so within that you have the phonological store, and this stores auditory information. And you have the articulatory process. So this is where maintenance rehearsal takes place. So this is when you think the information, you rehearse it so then it can be retained into your long-term memory. Then in the visuospatial sketchpad you have your inner scribe, which tells you where objects in your visual field are in relation to each other and their locations, and your visuospatial sketchpad, inner scribe, and visual cache. So that's just your store for all visual information. Okay, so that's with the things added on. And then, so the central executive is the supervisory role, and it allocates information to the episodic buffer as the overflow, and the visuospatial sketchpad and the phonological loop. And then the phonological loop and the visuospatial sketchpad are also connected to the episodic buffer as a source of overflow for them as well. Okay, right, evaluation. We'll do evaluation right at the bottom. Evaluation is even Baddeley admitted there's very little known about the role of the central executive. So the central executive is very understudied, and because it has such an important role in the model, kind of doesn't make sense that there's not enough research for it. So yeah, there's a lot of doubt on what the role of the central executive is. And then KF, I think KF provides research support because when he suffered amnesia, when information was read to him, he couldn't recall it, so his phonological loop was damaged, but when he wrote it himself, he could recall it, so his visuospatial sketchpad was intact. Okay, and then what else can we say? Let's have a look. More than one STM source, that's KF, so I said that. Oh, this is the memory one, the memory model. Baddeley provided research support with dual task performance. He got participants to carry out either a visual task at the same time or an auditory task at the same time too, or he got them to do one of each at the same time, and he found performance was 30% lower when they did 2 tasks of the same type at the same time. No, he didn't. He just found performance recall was lower when the tasks were of the same type than when they were separate, so this suggests they are coded separately. Clinical evidence, KF said that However, it's a brain study and these are limited because you don't really know what's caused their memory issue. And nature of a central executive is understudied. Okay, so that's the working memory model. That's the two models of memory. Okay, next topic, yay. Okay, I think in this video, I'm gonna finish all of memory in this video. So I know I said I'd do it like a video per page, but I think I just want to get it all done in one video. So what have I done? I'm coding capacity, duration, done the multi-store model, need to do types of long-term memory. Okay, AO1, types of long-term memory are, my room's too messy, it's fine. Episodic, procedural, and semantic. Episodic is episodes from our lives. These are timestamp memories, and they are specific and individual to you. Semantic is general knowledge of the world. This is not really specific to you because we all kind of share the same semantic memories most of the time. Procedural is how we do things, so how to ride a bike, how to hold a pen, and these are not time stamped, and procedural memories are the hardest to explain to somebody else. Okay, procedural is an automatic process as well, you don't need to think about it. Okay. What else do I need to say about them? Episodic, procedural, semantic. They are all added to throughout your life. Like, there's no time limit on when they can be added to. Yeah, wait, let me check AO1, see if there's anything I forgot. Right, episodic memories are super complex and they feature lots of elements. Such as what you're wearing, who you're with, how you felt the day. Okay, and then you have to make a conscious effort to recall them. Then semantic memories are constantly being added to, and according to Tolving, they're less vulnerable to distortion. Episodic memories, the ones that are personal to you, are the most vulnerable to forgetting and like dementia and other memory related illnesses. Okay, procedural. I said it with that. Okay, evaluation. Clinical evidence from Clive Waring and HM. Clive Waring was a professional musician and he could remember how to play the piano, but his semantic memory was damaged, and HM could recall knew what a dog was, but he couldn't recall having a stroke for a dog, so his semantic memory was intact, his episodic memory was damaged. Let me just check this right. Okay, episodic memory was severely impaired in both of them. Yeah, okay, I got that. Conflicting neuroimaging evidence. Buckner and Peterson. So the conflicting evidence over where different memories are located in the prefrontal cortex and the brain suggests it's very under-researched and not definitive. Real-world application. This can be used. Sylvie Belleville used it for the memory intervention, and it can be used to help people with like dementia and memory loss and things like that. Okay, so that was types of long-term memory. Found the working memory model. Explanation for forgetting interference. Okay, there are two types of interference, proactive and retroactive. Proactive suggests new information interferes with old information. No, proactive, old information interferes with new information. Retroactive, new information interferes with old information. So, and they have to be similar for it to interfere. Okay. So the research for this is Baddeley, I think. Was it Baddeley? A psychologist gave participants a list of words, and then he gave them another list of words from 6 different types of words, so synonyms, antonyms, words unrelated, 3-digit numbers, the control who didn't have a new list, and consonant syllables, and he found Rico was worse for, okay, oh, I remember this. Okay. He found Rico was the best for no new list. Rico was like 40%, and the worst for synonyms. I think Rico was 32%, then antonyms 34%. What am I even saying? That was so far off from the truth. No new word list, Rico was 4.2%, 4.5% really. Synonyms 1.2%, antonyms 1.8%, consonant syllables 2.5%. Okay, explanations for forgetting is the fact they're similar. Okay, so proactive, retroactive, is that all the research? Oh yeah. Okay, evaluation, it's badly. The rugby player, okay, I remember. Badly's rugby players, okay, I remember that what that is, so I'm not going to explain it, but the rugby players. And what other evaluation points are there? The word lists. Was it McGowan, McDonald? Yes. They their research lacks validity because the word lists are artificial stimuli. And then Tolving and Pasotka gave participants a list of words and then another list of words, and deterioration slowly got worse with more lists of words that were added, and support from drug studies, which was Lujitala, who showed that participants who had taken a drug beforehand, their memory was worse compared to a control group. Okay. Explanations for forgetting retrieval failure. Let me just check how much I have left to do. Okay, not much. Okay, explanations for forgetting retrieval failure. This is encoding specificity principle. So this is context and state dependent forgetting. So context is environmental factors like the weather, your location. State is internal factors, so how you feel. So it's like you feel anxious, your emotions, and alcohol is an important one. Okay, and the research to support this was the deep sea divers. So deep sea divers, I think this was Badley and Hitch again. They either learnt the information underwater and had to recall above underwater, or they learnt on land had to recall on land, or they learnt underwater had to recall on land, or they learnt on land had to recall underwater. And they found recall was worse when there was a mismatch of conditions. I think it might have been 30% worse when there was a mismatch of conditions, 40% lower. Oh, that's Gordon and Badley. Yeah. Recall was 40% lower when there was a mismatch of conditions and when there wasn't. And then Carter and Cassidy did state-dependent forgetting with the antihistamine. So learn on a drug, recall on a drug, learn off a drug, recall off a drug, learn on a drug, recall off a drug, learn off a drug, recall on a drug. And there's not a stat, but they found participants who had a mismatch of conditions, also their recall was lower. Okay, evaluation. Real world application. The drug one is important for understanding how drugs can affect your memory recall, which is good for like exams and stuff. Like people who have hay fever might take an antihistamine. It's kind of important to know that could affect your memory recall because your state is different. The deep sea divers, one limitation of that is that the conditions are so extreme that it doesn't reflect memory tasks in real life. And real world application, it can be used to help improve memory. So you say like, oh, I need to go into the other room and find my phone. I think that's called mnemonic techniques. No, but when does mnemonic techniques... Oh, yeah, this is mnemonic techniques. Okay, so this can lead to mnemonic techniques. Okay, and recall versus recognition. Gordon and badly replicated the study. Hold on. Okay, Gordon and badly replicated the study using a recognition test instead of recall, and they found recognition was much higher even when the conditions were different, so maybe the original study kind of lacks some validity and usefulness issues, and it's about the type of memory that's being tested. Okay, so that is explanation for forgetting retrieval failure. Okay, there we go. Okay, factors affecting the accuracy of eyewitness testimony, misleading information. So this is post-event discussion and leading direct questions. So leading questions was done when participants, a psychologist got participants to watch videos of a car crash, and she changed the adverb. Yeah, no. I think she changed the verb. She changed the verb. Collided, smashed, bumped, hit. I don't know what else. And she found collided, I think, produced 38 miles an hour average. Bumped, 34. Basically, whatever adjective they were asked, whatever verb they were asked, changed how they had perceived the car crash, the collision. It was a collision. And participants who were given the verb smashed also falsely reported having seen glass, but that wasn't in the video, so that really shows how it can affect your memory distortion. Okay, and then post-event discussion was a psychologist got participants to watch the same crime scene from different point of views and then to discuss it afterwards, and I think they found, can't remember what the stats were, maybe like it's either 30 or 70, I think, incorrect details were falsely recorded, whereas compared to a control group it was 0 incorrect details were falsely recorded. 71% of the participants mistakenly recorded aspects of the crime that hadn't been in their point of view of the video. Okay, and then there's two explanations for this: memory contamination or distortion, where your memory actually becomes contaminated by what you have seen from post-event discussion, or memory conformity, where you conform to the view of others. Okay, evaluation, real-world application again, because knowing this can help improve like detective investigations and stuff. Oh, and sometimes in courts, a psychologist is in attendance to help understand like how leading questions might affect witnesses' accounts. So it has had a real impact on the legal system. Let me just look at the AO1 to see where the AO3 could be. The fact is video clips for cars, Loftus and Palmer, is not as distressing as the actual situation would be in real life, where you're having to recall memories. There it kind of lacks. What does it lack? Because it doesn't lack mundane realism. Maybe it does. Yeah, I guess you could say it kind of lacks mundane realism because they're seeing it on a video, and in real life your memory would be changed by something you're actually seeing in person, you're actually experiencing. Okay, and then Harleen found evidence against substitution because when participants were asked about what they had seen, their details for central details had remained unaffected mostly. It was peripheral details that were affected. So, okay, I remember it's Loftus and Palmer and then Gabbett. So Loftus, Palmer and Gabbett, their research may have exaggerated the effect of misleading information because central details have been found to remain intact. And then demand characteristics, participants may have worked out the aims of the studies, then been affected by the please you or disagree you bias or just demand characteristics. Okay, I need a break. Okay, so I got a bit distracted, but back to it. Now I'm in a good mood. That's good actually, I got distracted because I'm in a good mood now. Okay, factors affecting the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Is that where we are? Yes. Anxiety. So either has a positive effect or a negative effect. Positive research was done by Johnson and Scott, and they put participants in a waiting room in either a high anxiety condition or a low anxiety condition. And in the high anxiety condition, they overheard shouting and glass breaking, and they saw a man walk past holding a knife with blood on his hands. Participants in the low anxiety condition overheard a casual conversation, and they saw a man walk past with a pen and ink on his hands. And they found that participants in the high anxiety condition, their recall was 30% compared to 49%. From a set of 50 photos when they identified the man. This is because of tunnel theory, where your perception and what you're looking at becomes zoomed in on the source of the anxiety. So the knife with the blood, and this is also called weapons focus effect when it's in relation to a weapon. Okay, so the evaluation for this is Pickle, and he said it was about unusualness, not anxieties. He did a study in a hairdressing salon with a gun, a raw chicken, and scissors, and he found recall was lowest with raw chicken, which is the unusualness. However, one criticism of this study, of Pickle's study, is that the fact he used scissors as the source of anxiety in a hairdressing salon doesn't really make sense, because these would not elicit anxiety in a hairdressing salon, so we would expect them to be there. Okay, more evaluation for anxiety's negative effects. There's another study that I think critiques, Valentine and Mescal, the London Dungeon. Valentine and Mescal's London Dungeon, they measured heartbeats, the participants' anxiety by measuring their heartbeat, and they found people who were shown to have high anxiety, their memory recall was worse than people who were shown to have low anxiety. So this supports Johnson and Scott. Okay, and then anxiety can also have a positive effect on recall. And research for this comes from Yule and Cutshall, and they looked at a real case of a Canada shooting where a shop owner had shot and killed a burglar in Canada. And so Yule and Cutshall looked at the witnesses' original police interviews, and then they conducted another interview, I think maybe 2 more interviews. One of them I think was 6 months later, and they found witnesses who had identified themselves as having high levels of anxiety had the best memory recall of the most and their accounts of what had happened had remained the most consistent, whereas witnesses who had identified themselves as having low anxiety, they had the worst recall and their accounts deteriorated more. Okay, so I think that's all the AO1. Okay, wait, I'll quickly do the AO3 for that. Okay, so evaluation for that is, I'm trying to think if there's any studies. Or one problem with that is that it's a case study, so it can't be replicated, so the findings are very limited, and it's such a small sample of people. However, as a case study, it's really valuable because it offers psychological opportunity to look at something we ethically and practically otherwise would not be able to look at, and it's a real life situation, so that's quite important. Oh, Christensen and Hübner, I can never remember this. They looked at actual bank robberies in Sweden, and they found some of the witnesses were directly involved, and their recall was good. Yeah, they had good recall, those who had high anxiety and who had been direct to the robberies. Okay, so that's the evaluation, and then you can also say for evaluation that this is good in real world application in understanding how anxiety affects eyewitness testimony. So this is good in the legal practice because like psychological help could be offered to witnesses to help them navigate their anxiety so that witness accounts are better, and also so we take into account that anxiety has this effect. And then the York-Dodson U-curve takes into account both the negative and positive effects to say that up to a point anxiety helps your recall. What is this called when it's curvilinear relationship? So up to a point anxiety helps your memory recall, but after the optimum point where recall is the best, it starts to go downwards and anxiety hinders your memory recall. So this is a good aspect of anxiety's effect on eyewitness testimony, because it takes into account both positive and negative and doesn't say it's just black or white, which would have been a limitation of the two previous ideas because the fact they're so black and white is limited, because that kind of lacks face validity. Also, I forgot to say the positive effect works through the fight or flight response, and your fight is triggered, so you become more alert and more aware of your surroundings, and you become psychologically aroused, I think is the term. And then you can also say it's an extra evaluation point for negative effects. One reason this might be biologically is because your parasympathetic nervous system, like your state, is triggered, and this is when like digestion stops and like your biology, like your body stops working as it normally would. So this would obviously, like, we can presume this would hinder your ability to remember. Okay, and then also evaluation is face validity. I can't remember if I said that because it makes sense why these two things would affect your memory recall. Okay, improving, wait, let me just check I got all of that. Yeah, 49:33, fight or flight. They were asked on a 7-point scale, and there was 21 witnesses, 13 took part in the study. 88% in the high stress group recalled accurate details, compared to 75% in the less stress group. Okay, so that's all the AO1, okay? AO3 now. Oh no, I've done AO3. Wait, I need to check AO3. Yeah, I got that. Valentine and Massout. I need to remember London Dungeon. And Swindon. Swindon. Why do I keep saying Swindon? What is that? That's proactive interference. No, it's retroactive, because I know did I know about Swindon or Sweden first? Probably know about Swindon first, to be honest. Okay, now onto the cognitive interview. One sec. Okay, there are 6 components to the cognitive interview. Right, let's see if I can remember them. Reinstate context, reverse order, change perspective. No, there's 4. I said there was 6 last time and there wasn't. Okay, reverse order, reinstate context, change perspective, and record everything. And then it's the enhanced cognitive interview. Okay, so reverse order, this means you, instead of going chronologically from the start of the day to the end of the day, or from the start of the case to the end, like what you've witnessed, either go from the end and backwards, or just pick a random point throughout and then work your way backwards or work your way forwards, whatever. And this is so you're taking away what your predictive bias, like you're not, because when you do it chronologically you might just record what you predict would happen or what you would expect to happen. When you change for order, that's not an issue, so you're not writing down what you expected to happen. Okay, record everything that is the easiest one to explain, because it's literally just like details that you might not have thought were important, may be important, and they might reveal something else. So you literally need to report everything, like what you're wearing, what the weather was like, literally everything. Okay, reinstate contacts. You need to reimagine yourself where you were. So if you're at bank robbery, you need to reimagine you're at bank robbery, because this could act as a memory cue, like state dependent forgetting, because if you re-put yourself in the place where you are, like you reimagine yourself, this psychologically become more immersed in remembering what you experienced and what you witnessed when you were there. Okay, and then what's the last one? I need to change perspective, because again, this takes away from you recording what you expected to happen when you change the perspective, and you might look at it from a different point of view and think, oh, this happened and I originally wouldn't have thought to have said that, because I would have missed it in my recollection. So change perspective. Okay, and then the enhanced cognitive interview, this basically involves the interviewer, like the police officer, knowing when to maintain eye contact and when to withdraw it, removing any distractions, and basically knowing like how to hold themselves and like their posture and how to approach the interview and how to talk, and like knowing like what tone of voice and stuff to use, and getting the witness to speak slower and asking open-ended questions. Okay, and then evaluation. One psychologist looked at when a standard interview and a cognitive interview had been used, and they found a cognitive interview was more effective. I think, is it 40%? Yeah, 41% increase in accurate information in the cognitive interview. And who did that? Kuhn did that. Okay, so the cognitive interview has clearly been shown to be effective. Okay, and the evaluation for this was so much. So that's that. Then another point is, one psychologist found that doing reinstate context and record everything worked better as a combination to produce better recall than any other combinations. So this suggests some parts of the cognitive interview are better, more successful than other parts, and you don't need to use all of it. Also, then this follows on to pick a mix. Police officers and detectives can use a pick a mix of the different aspects of the cognitive interview to help improve the recall. They don't need to use all of them, because particularly if a witness is distressed or like that could take up a lot of time, so it might be better to just pick one or two. And real world application is that it can improve detective cases and police cases. However, the enhanced cognitive interview is time consuming and costly, and many police stations might not have the funding for it, or the time, like police officers have to spend a lot of time on doing that, and that might not be practical. I think is that all of it? That's all of the evaluation. That's memory done. So praise the Lord, that's so good. Next topic is attachment. It's okay, attachment isn't hard, there's just a lot, but it's fine. Okay, so on to the last page of memory. I'm so happy the cognitive interview, and it's the best page. Okay, the cognitive interview, there are 6 components. Wait, did I finish this one?